Baie dankie vir almal wat ingeskakel het. Ons weet julle tyd is baie kosbaar. Ons weet van julle nou net by die huis gekom na 'n lang dag by die werk en van die kinders is besig om rond te hardloop, gewag om gevoed en gebad te word. So ons gaan net 'n uur van julle tyd vat. P het ook gevra asseblief moet klaar wees vir binnelanders begin. So ons sal dit definitief doen. By Bouwes is ons trots Suid-Afrikaans, ons is trots Afrikaans en ons sal altyd bereid wees om julle in julle taal te bedien en adviseer, maar vir vanaand terwyl van ons Engelse kykers gaan ons die virtuele wynproe in Engels waardig. It's officially our third virtual wine tasting, and we've grown in leaps and bounds, not only by the number of people joining and also the production quality, but definitely also about the quality of wines we are going to taste later on. And tonight we're hosting for two reasons. Firstly, it's to thank you, our client, for being with us since 2008 when Dr. Rian Botha, my father, started the company. And the client have always been the cornerstone. Without you, we've ceased to exist. Since then, we've grown and we've got a team of specialists that can serve you in every area of your financial portfolio. We've currently we're managing around about 1,000 households, 1,000 families, and also 15 pension and provident funds we manage, of which the National Financial Ombudsman is our client recently. So we want you to enjoy tonight. Take a moment to relax as well, and it's just a chance for us to enjoy the same glass of wine throughout South Africa. We've shipped 190 wine throughout South Africa, and we are going to be joined by an estimate of 220 people tonight on the virtual tasting. And we are living in an interesting time. We've just had the National Government Union announced, and the Cabinet's been announced, and there's an air of positivity. And talking about collaboration, I want to introduce my panel with me. It's Louis Strydom, head winemaker of Ernie Els. Welcome, Louis.
Thank you.
And then also Albert Coetzee, who's the head of the global investment platform at 91.
Thank you.
And then also the newest face at Bouwes, Francois Leclerc. Welcome, Francois. And I want to start with you. Francois, you've joined Bouwes earlier this year, but you've been in the industry for about 10 years. And those of you who might recognize Francois, you used to be a provincial cricket player there in Pretoria with the Titans. So, and it's also a relatively good golfer, playing off a 4 handicap. But Francois, why did you join the industry, and what makes you most excited about working with clients and their hard-earned money?
Yeah, Hugh, that's a very good question. I think for myself, I always loved working with people. So I studied human resource management of everything at the University of Pretoria, did my honors in that. And I just saw that that wasn't going to be my career path. And always loved finance, always loved investments. And I think it was just a good flow from there going into finance, because we do work with people and our heart is for people and finances at the same time. So it's a very good fit for me. And, you know, I just love my job. I love working with people and solving problems, because at the end of the day, what keeps people awake at night, well, mostly, if it's not a cheating spouse, it's finance. It's finance. And I think that's so extremely important for us to understand that we can make a real big difference in people's lives. And that's why I joined Bouwes, is for the fact that they actually do care about their clients. They care about the industry, and we want to reshape the industry. We don't want to be just another brokerage out there that just, you know, gives willy-nilly advice just for our own sake. That's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason also we're hosting an event like tonight, is to give back to our clients and to give knowledge and some great wine back to our clients. And we've also recently opened our new office in Stellenbosch. So it was great for me to have someone joining from Bouwes down here in the Western Cape. So if ever you are in the area, our office, we created a space where clients can come and work. They can host meetings there and also just enjoy a glass of wine. I forgot to say that if you do have any questions, there is a comment box, a Q&A box that we might get to towards the end. And also share your pictures wherever you are tasting wine. Take some selfies, share it with your advisor, send it to me so we can also see how you are enjoying tonight. But talking about wine, Louis, I think people there at home, if they have any wine left, we've delivered it last week. So hopefully when Portugal scored that first try, they didn't open up the red wine. But before we start, you've also got a little interesting gift, or not a gift, something here that you brought for us. For those of you who don't know, this is the claret jug, which is the trophy of the Open Championship that was hosted this last weekend. It's a 4th major in golf. And it was so close, Louis, that Tristan Lawrence, he was leading after 9 holes.
Yeah.
With 9 holes to go, was leading. And then Xander Schauffele, who was willing to lend this to us for the weekend, for the week, the Claret Jug, came through. And interesting, as we head into the Olympics, Xander Schauffele was actually the last gold medalist at the Olympic Games. So, Louis, first of all, how's your golf game?
My golf game, very poor. The reason, because Ernie said if my handicap goes below 20, I must find myself a new job, because then he knows I'm not spending enough time in the cell and too much time on the golf course. So that's exactly what. That is why I keep my golf. I'm a big ringer, so I keep my handicap really high, so they don't.
Franz just said you can play. He's what you should play before, so he said,
in his own golf day. So now I've seen the man play.
No, but Louis, maybe you can introduce the first one. I think people are home and are keen to taste some wine. Let's get into our first
can
wine.
Just grab their glass, pour a bit of wine in their glass, because obviously any good conversation starts with a good glass of wine. So we're just tasting portions for ourselves, so that we can just evaluate the wine and see what the wine is all about. So let me just tell you a little bit about Ernie and how we how the project gets started. So way back in 2000 was our maiden vintage. So I was in the winemaker at Proprietor Wine Estate. And Ernie and John Engelbrecht at that time came to me and said, we need to start a wine project together. Ernie travels a lot around the world, and they called, it does a lot of pro-am events. There's a lot of functions, and we think really would be a really interesting idea to actually attach Ernie's name to a wine. So I said to Ernie, let's sit around the table. Let's make a decision on what wine we're going to make. And then Ernie said, no, he doesn't know much about wine. They come from Kempton Park, and they drink beer and brandy, and that's all. That's mostly what they drink. So I said, Ernie, it's interesting that you say that. The thing about wine, you don't actually have to know anything technically. You don't have to describe the wine to me. You don't have to taste the tannins and the structure and say this wine's got potential for another 10 years. All that you need to say, I like the wine, or I don't like the wine. And that's in many things in life, that you don't have to be an expert to know what you like. And that day, the signature was born, the Ernie Els signature, which is a Bordeaux blend. Because I put 5 wines on the table and I numbered them 1 to 5. And I said, just give me the number, the one you like. It's all you really need to know about wine. And that's how the Ernie Els signature was born back in 2000, maiden vintage. So this year was our 24th vintage. And this year, we had an amazing vintage, 2024. I know that we had like a really wet September, but then October, November, December, January, February, it was beautiful, dry conditions, warm conditions, which is great for the evolvement and the ripening of Cabernet Sauvignon, because Cabernet Sauvignon ripens towards the last end of March, and you need lovely sunshine, and that is what we have on the Helderberg Mountains where we are situated. So just 25 kilometers away from Stellenbosch, about 15 kilometers away from Stellenbosch, and about 10 kilometers away from the cold Atlantic Ocean. And there's an amazing effect on our terroir from a diurnal effect, day and night temperatures that gives us a great potential to ripen Cabernet Sauvignon. So 60% of all Ernie's production on the farm is Cabernet Sauvignon. We only produce red on the farm. And you ask, why is that? Why do we only do red? But if you look at just our aspect towards the northern slopes on this Helderberg, that you have Rustenvrede, you have Alto, you have Ernie, you have just around the corner, you have Eikendal. When all these red wine properties, it's just, it's really a core of great red wine producers, and it's just this amazing terroir, the soils and the aspect we've got. So in your glass is the Cabernet Sauvignon 2022. It is a young wine, but I'm really happy with this wine. This one actually just received 95 points and a gold medal in the International Decanter Wine Awards in London. So we're really happy with the result we achieved. So I think it's to getting international recognition of the wine you make. They taste wines from all over the world. We in South Africa, when you see with the wine in front of you and you think it's great. but it's easy to be great in your own backyard, but you need to be relevant and you need to be able to be on a power and level of quality internationally, because when you go in South Africa on a shelf, you compete against each other. But as soon as you move out of our comfort space, you compete against France, Italy, Spain, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand. All those countries are there. Then you need to compete against them, and then you need to be relevant, the wine that you make. So it's really nice to see getting in the international awards for this 2022. So on the nose, you will pick up. It's got a lot of really bright fruit of Cabernet Sauvignon. So there's like a red cherry, mulberry flavors, a little bit of blueberry as well that runs through on the undertone of the wine. And we mature these wines in French oak barrels for a minimum of 20 to 22 months. And Cabernet just loves oak, because what the oak brings to us is actually it absorbs oxygen through the atmosphere into the barrel, into the oak, and into the Cabernet Sauvignon. Cabernet Sauvignon, from a variety perspective, is probably the variety with the smallest berry. So what that does, it gives a lot of tannins and a lot of flavor profiles to the wine. So you need a bit of oxygen, you need a bit of maturation in the barrel to actually soften that tannin and to make that wine drinkable and accessible. And that is what I think what we really achieved in this 2022 vintage. And I'm surprised myself a little bit. And that's the thing about wine, it's not a recipe. And sometimes you surprise yourself when you go probably in the financial decisions. It's also never a recipe. Sometimes you're surprised by something that happens. And I'm really surprised by this voluptuousness and the viscosity that I got from the 2022 vintage and the opulence that I got on the mouthfeel for such a young wine, actually. So I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, and you've been 20 years now with Ernie Els, and I remember you said to me that if you were to be a winemaker, say from 25 to 65, you've only got 40 chances in your lifetime to get it right. And it does speak to investments, because we'll speak about the investments later, but you also maybe sometimes stumble, like you said, on a surprise. It's not always just like a perfect recipe. Just quickly back to Ernie Els. Is he still very involved? Does he come here every now and then and say this is not as good as a French wine? Or not necessarily? How involved is Ernie?
No, so Ernie is based in Florida. Being on the PGA Champions Tour, still playing very much a professional golfer. So he spends a lot of time there. But normally here in October, I get a call from Ernie, and then he says, "I'm tired of standing around a fireplace in America and making South African jokes, and no one's laughing at my jokes. It's time to come home, and get some African sunshine on my skin again." So he loves South Africa, but he understands that his profession and his career is very much on the PGA Tour still, and he's done a lot of investment into autism. Ben is autistic, his son. He's built a big centrum in Florida, in Jupiter, where he helps. We have a lot of satellites around the globe, from Cape Town to Johannesburg to Perth in Australia and London, where all that feeds into that. So his life is very much there now, and I'm trying to say so. But he loves coming to the farm, and he sits on the terrace here, and then he drinks wine, and then we try and protect him against everybody, but. He's just a people's person that everybody needs to come. So what I need to do, I need to pack all my merchandise away. Because normally we would tell the people, go and fetch a cap in the merchandise area and bring it to me and I'll sign it for you. And so he normally gives everything when he's here. And that's the type of personality he is. It's just and that's why people love him on tour. He's such a people's person, and that has always been Ernie's way of playing golf. They always used to say, when Tiger came off in the heyday, when they were both, in the top 5, and I think Ernie is probably one of the golfers in the longest in the top 10. That when Ernie comes off the golf course, he puts his clubs in the boot and goes and has a few beers with the boys. And when Tiger came off, he went to the driving range and trained for another 2 hours after his round. But that's just how Ernie was, and that's sometimes in life you need to be there. You need to be who you are instead of trying to be something you're not. And that is very much Ernie. So he loves South Africa. He loves coming to the farm, and he loves spending time here. But he doesn't spend that much time as you would like to. But because still being a professional golfer, you play most weekends, and when you're off, the sponsors like Boeing, he's got an SAP and Breitling, they're also looking for time to give a return on investment. So his time is small, but he's still a shareholder of Ernie Els Wines. Although in 2017 we had a shareholder that bought the majority share, Baron Hans from Stuff, that bought the majority shareholding of the Ernie Els property, and the two of them together, we manage the property as such, Ernie Els.
Okay, no, that's great. I remember my sister and her husband lives in the USA, and they were at the golf that he was playing, because he's playing well now, and they called him in Afrikaans, and then immediately he came and took a picture of them. So 100%, like you're saying, it's just such a warm and such a great ambassador for South Africa.
Yeah, very true.
Albert,
I think this is a lot more intense.
Albert said
I think I'm here for compliance.
Albert said I shouldn't ask you tough questions about the market, because you're not a market specialist.
No, I'm not a market
Actually,
specialist.
you studied law, and you studied certified financial planner, so it's an interesting combination that you have. But Albert, just after the elections, we were quite surprised actually how it turned out, the government of national unity. There's an air of positivity with our clients, with the general word on the street. As asset managers, just around 91, do you share that sentiment?
I think the whole markets share the sentiment. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. I hope I can add value tonight. So to learn. But yeah, I think you can see it in the market. You can see it in South African Inc. shares. You can see it in the bonds. You can see in the property, listed property. You could see it in the bank shares. You could see it in the retail. It's been well received. I think it's the best we could have hoped for. But interesting, you see it in the market. But if you look, and it's quite short sort of lift so far, but if you say, have you seen flows into unit trust? Have you seen flows into the businesses we do, for example, investments? We see the normal flows, but not an increase in that. So I think the worry there is, from me to the audience, I think we'll touch on it a little bit later, there's still a lot of clients sitting in bank accounts. I think the highest ever. The average normally for retail bank accounts is about 750 billion rand. Currently, there's about 1.8 trillion rand sitting in South African retail deposits, not institutional pension, for example, because I think of interest rate, because of volatility, etc. Even though the market have re-rated since, it's still way off versus in 2018 when you had the Ramaphosa period. So I think there's still a lot of legs in the market. I'm not saying rush into the market, but also watch out that you don't lose out on that positivities, because it seems like it's well received, but it seems like everybody in government is almost like they have matured a step, and they actually have the sort of inclination. So hopefully this will continue to sort of say, let's improve the lives of the services of the people.
Yeah.
And hopefully with that also increase or improve the economic growth in South Africa.
Just to give a perspective of where Albert sits, so there's two ways that you can get offshore exposure as such. And first of all, through your rands, through an asset swap that you feed a fund, basically, so you're still invested in rands, and you will see that with your retirement annuity, there will be an offshore component. And then there's physically taking the money offshore and investing it in dollars or pounds or euros. And you sit on that platform where you can see the money going out of South Africa, just to get a bit of perspective.
We sit on both. Of course, 91 do both. I think on the local side, I have discretionary money. I buy an overseas fund. That's a feeder fund that feeds into the big brother overseas. But I think the big catch there two ways. One day when I redeem, that money must be paid back into my South African bank account. That's a discretionary investment. The second investment is I have a pension fund. I got a provident fund. I got a preservation fund because I left my employment yesterday. I make annual 350 contributions to a retirement annuity. There, the Act blocks me that I cannot have more than 45% overseas exposure. But that's still also feeder funds. And if the rand weakens, whatever, I get the growth. But that's part of my retirement investment. The other client of yours potentially may have retired in the beginning of the year. He sits or she sits in a living annuity. There you can have overseas exposure. Interesting. The Act is quite interesting. That investment is governed by the Long-Term Assurance Act. And that, if you want, you can go 100% offshore. even though the retirement space before I build upwards blocks me to 45% offshore exposure. And then, as you say, the last leg here is I take my annual R1 million allowance out of the country, or me and my wife do apply for my annual 10 million allowance via SARS and SARB, or I maybe sold a big business today and I actually applied to Reserve Bank and say I want special clearance because I want to take 100 million rand out of the country. Now that leg, I buy physically the asset offshore, and one day when I redeem, that money doesn't have to be paid back to South Africa. That money can be paid to any other bank account overseas in the world. So I think it's very important when we talk offshore to say which of those channels. Maybe I don't have enough money, but then start with a saving and discretionary money into feeder funds, build up, and maybe then take the money physically out of the country.
Yeah, so looking at the direct offshore model, I mean, we've seen a lot of clients sit with a lot of offshore cash. Now, they've got a big problem because they did this a few years ago where they didn't report it to SARS, stuff like that. But going into that, what are the biggest mistakes that you see clients make or investors make when investing offshore?
I think if you look at the last 2 years, because of the weakness of the rand, we found flows from South Africa have slowed down from South Africa because our South African clients are fixated by the rand. So that's almost like, what does the rand do? My view is if it's longer term investment because of X, Y, and Z, sort of like there's a lot of other things other than. But say, for example, yes, there's flows from South Africa because clients were sensitive to the rand. What 91 have done, we said, okay, fine, forget about that type of flow of channel of business. Francois, there's a lot of money. If there's 1.8 trillion rand sitting in the retail South African bank deposits, there's still also a lot similar overseas. And that's not only South Africa, it's all over the world.
Yeah.
Now, currently, if I sit in an overseas bank account, I now getting taxed on that interest, which maybe 4 years ago I didn't get taxed because there was no yield.
Yeah.
Now, very important, don't hide that interest because from a CRS, Common Monetary Reporting System, SARS will pick it up.
Yeah.
Very important. Now, I pay tax on that. Now, and secondly, for offshore bank accounts, you're exposed to one bank. And then thirdly, very importantly, I still have to find a offshore bank, and I'm not against them, which should show you how illiquid that is on DEF, even though me and my wife owns the account together. So what we say, for example, keep your account open to travel, to spend, whatever. I'm not saying closing it, but that overflow, transfer that across maybe to an offshore money market in dollar, in pounds, or in euro, because South Africa still acknowledged on the overseas side a thing which we don't find in South Africa. In overseas markets, in money market, you find a thing called an accumulation class, a rolled up class, which means when that 5 or 6% in the bank account wants to declare, it rolls into the price, which means that on a money market overseas, if you use the right one, there's no income tax whatsoever, only capital gains tax. And then if that money is maybe a longer term, 6 months, 1 year, whatever, you package it in such a structure that the package actually allows for beneficiary nominations. So when I die on the 1st of March, my wife literally can have the money next month. You do not necessarily have that with bank accounts overseas.
Yeah. So how do you what type of vehicle do you use to be able to have that succession?
Because of that, interesting also, maybe we touch on it later. We wrote an article recently, what are the 10 things that keep high net worth clients and families awake? So I assume everybody on this call, apart from the wine, so sort of like at least have an updated will. Working with Boves, I trust you have. But when I have an investment and the investment is governed by my will, suddenly I'm exposed to the master. One day the master will appoint an executor. The executor would eventually look at my will. He or she will charge, and then action will happen. Suddenly, because of that massive, then that delay can take longer than 12 months. So don't think if you sit with money in South African bank accounts and overseas bank accounts, when you die, that money is like that available to your spouse. Not necessarily. Because of that sort of thing which started to create a bottleneck since COVID, Francois, we find investments. If I complete an application form today, and that application form say, Albert, who is your beneficiary? If I write the name Francois there, that overrides whatever I say in my will. And suddenly, if I do that, when I die, there's no master, there's no executor, there's no executive fee, whatever, you can have the money next month. So when I go overseas for South African tax residence. I find the global sinking fund endowment wrapper type of thing is the popularity just shot up. Currently, if we take money out of the country, 80% of that goes to that type of structure, where the beneficiary nomination actually dictates almost directly where the money go, because I cut out my will.
Yeah. So if I understand this correctly, you've got a flexible offshore model where there are basically no constraints on how much money you can withdraw,
But governed by my will.
governed by your will.
On my
And then
death.
you've got the endowment and the sinking fund structure that you've got you've got the succession, and then you've got the tax advantage as well, because all of a sudden your tax is coming down to 30% on interest, still 20% on dividends, and your capital gains is down to 12%, whereas it won't be like that with a flexible investment.
Yeah, the flexible investment I tax in my own hands. It's interesting, even in the endowment, there's not even 30%, because remember, inside everything's rolled up. So it's only capital gains tax.
When you use the money market.
Anything,
Okay.
anything. And then, 91 actually went a step further in that regard. We recently created the third leg, because even though these two legs are very nice, and as I said, 80% go to the endowment wrapper, and I have it now today, but next month I emigrate. Is that product still worth my while? If I emigrate, it is not. So that's why we created a third leg of product vehicle for Albert that now I've just paid my exit capital gain. Or maybe Albert's live in Stellenbosch, passed away in Stellenbosch one day, but my son Francois lives abroad. He cannot inherit that investment from me. He must inherit the third leg. So now, sort of, when we get involved with advisors, yes, we look at the client's tax residency. What is it about with the client? But gone are the days where we only look at the client. We also now look at the family. So where's the children living? Where's the husband or wife living? Are they planning to immigrate? Whatever. That will steer us, obviously, with the advisor, because we work with the end client via Bovest to steer us which product vehicle we go to. And once you've settled and sign off on the product vehicle, now we say which share, which unit trust, whatever we invest. And I think in the old days, the client took the money out of the country and they went straight, let's buy that share.
Yeah.
I think gone are those days.
Yes.
Completely.
Yeah, and I think you look after the family, and you were the first to introduce family pricing model as well. But Albert, if you can just go take a step back, when 91 started, it's quite a new company, if I can call it such, 5-6 years now, and it broke away from Investec Asset Management, and you were part of Investec before that time. Maybe just take us through the transition phase from a branding perspective of just overall. I mean, Hendrik de Tooy still stayed ahead of which were part of the Investec Asset Management, still ahead of the of 91 now. But you were part of that whole evolution. Just maybe take us through that and how difficult it was.
Yeah, I think the 91 came from the Investec Bank stable. Investec Bank had 5 pillars of business. We were one of them, called Investec Asset Management. And literally in March 2020, in the midst of COVID, we actually split away. It was not because we wanted to raise capital. We just felt like the asset management leg does their business on their own, and the bank does. And the bank has done very well since, same as us. And 91, the name, people say, where does the name come from? Is the year we started as Investec Asset Management in 1991. So even though we're worldwide, we got 21 offices in 15 countries. We've got clients in 105 countries. But because we're worldwide, we still wanted to pull the name back to our heritage, which is South African. So it's always new and interesting to create a new name, especially 91. Sort of people say, where does this name come from? But I think what's very nice, and even us thought at the time, sort of like 91, is that the name? But I think what's wonderful now, looking back, if I mention to the audience 91 tonight, they will not forget it. They will not forget how you spell it. They will not forget how you pronounce it. And even if you just say the numerical 91, they will remember that. And that clients in South Africa, the same mentality or same sentiment will be clients anywhere in the world in 105 countries. So I think looking back personally, I think we could not have chosen a better name. Yeah.
Talking about branding, and I mean, you've got Ernie Els on the wine bottle, you've got Ernie Els Wine Farm, and you said it can definitely be to the benefit of the company, but also it can be actually to the detriment. Just maybe explain that to us, Lee.
Yeah. You know, Ernie Els and the celebrity status that he has got. You know, sometimes people don't take us as serious as what we feel that the wine that we make. But through now nearly 2.5 decades of making the Ernie Els wine, we've got a proven track record, and I think that's the same with investment. If there's a proven track record of an investment structure, then people start believing in it and they start becoming confident in that. But even still today, you still when we introduce new people to the Ernie Els brand, they're still hesitant. So it's a celebrity brand. How serious is it? And then when they have the first bottle, the second bottle, it always normally comes not too soon after that. So so the liquid assets that we've got as a winery, last really long, and all your spouse really needs is a corkscrew to have access to it immediately. They don't have to wait until the bottle pays out, or they have to wait anymore. So they've got so our assets you can have immediate access to. Your spouse,
You see Louis listening. So I'm actually adding value, Louis.
yeah, adding value, but if you don't want to leave it for your spouse, I would advise you to not wait and just enjoy wine as much as possible, because you never know where tomorrow is. And invest into wine. And normally buy 6 bottles, because you have to see the evolution of the wine. Don't buy only 1 bottle. So 6 at a time, and then you're going to see how they.
But don't drink all of them at one time.
Not drink all of them. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it depends on who you invite over.
Yeah.
But you say at home, we when we enjoy wine. My wife's also a winemaker at Coetzee, and she makes her own wine, Strydom vineyards. So we have lots of wine at home, but we will never open a second bottle of wine that's exactly the same. There's always the enjoyment of the new experience, of the flavor profiles, and the nuances of wines are just so different. And that's the great thing about wine. When McDonald's sit around the table, they all try and say, right, how can we have a McDonald's burger, Big Mac taste exactly this in Shanghai and London taste exactly the same? When we as winemakers sit around the table, say, how different can these wines be? And I think that is what it is. And we work with nature, and nature's, you get given that, you don't shape that. And that is the great thing about wine. Wine is shaped by nature every day. As we sit here, this beautiful rain out there is shaping the vintage that's coming. And I think that's the great thing about wine.
That's very true. But the question is always, Louis, now you have guests over. Which wine do you serve first? Is it the more expensive one first, or do you keep that bottle there towards the end?
First.
Otherwise, they're not. It's nice to walk to
No,
a
I
cabinet
can appreciate
and-
the end.
No, first, second, third, and last. Only the best.
Only the
Wine
best.
is, like they say in the classics, wine is too short to drink bad wine.
True.
So,
Which
but
true.
in South Africa, we are so fortunate to be blessed with amazing, obviously sunshine and amazing, obviously terroirs. That the wines that we make in South Africa, if I go into the national wine market and I taste wines that we compete against and say the quality and the standard of our wine in South Africa, in the Western Cape, is amazing, and you can go from one producer to the next and have a great quality wine. Where in Europe, you really need to be careful, where you're purchasing wine and what you're purchasing and where it is. So the minefield is much bigger, but I think it's a much bigger market. And if you look at Bordeaux, just a region in France is bigger than the whole South African wine industry. Sure. It just takes you into context how big our industry is. I think we are about 9th or 10th on the world map, and we have about 92,000 hectares of vineyard. And it's decreasing every year a little bit, and we're getting smaller and smaller. But I think we're getting close to an equilibrium level that I made wine for 2 years in the south of France, and there the wine is a lifestyle. They have rosé for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they feed it to anybody that comes and visits them. Where in South Africa, we see wine as more an occasion and not an everyday drink. And that's a difference, that's why we are about 7 liters per capita, and France is about 45 liters per capita. And that's the difference, the volume.
Yeah, I know definitely the guys in Pretoria see it as an occasion. They drink brandy most of the time, and then now and then they will go to red wine. So this is a good excuse for them.
I always say, the brandy drinkers are the best wine drinkers, because what you need about 6 liters of wine to make 1 liters of brandy. Because we distill the wine and we distill the alcohol out, and then when you have more or less 6 liters of wine, gives you 1 liter of brandy. So what the brandy drinkers do for us, they take away all the poor quality wine and all that surplus, and they leave only the best wine for us as wine drinkers.
So
to
they
drink.
can keep on drinking.
They must keep drinking the brandy. Exactly. They'll take away all the medium quality wine.
Before we get to the next one, I think you're being modest. You are part of the Winemakers Guild for a couple of years now. You've also been the chairperson on the
Correct.
Cape Winemakers Guild. Maybe just take us through what is the Cape Winemakers Guild, and your wife is on there as well.
Yes, my wife also a Cape Winemakers Guild. So it is a guild of professionals in the wine industry. You have to be a winemaker. It is by invitation only. We're currently about 43 members of all would say the best winemakers in South Africa. And it's about learning from each other and about understanding what we need to achieve to make the South African wine internationally relevant. So we taste once a month. International wines, like you said, this month we tasted wines from Champagne, all the big brand houses from Krug, Bollinger, Mouton Chandon. So understanding those flavor profiles and then actually applying that within your winery. And the thing is, with us as an industry, we're very open and we share a lot, because if you haven't got the grape that you produce on the farm, nobody can make the same wine as you've got. It's like if you haven't got the raw product, nobody can make the wine you've got. And that's why our industry is really nice to work in, because there's a lot of sharing, and that is what the guild is all about. And it's about giving back. And we have a protege program where we take graduates from University Stellenbosch and Elsenburg, with the two main institutions where the winemakers, we give them a 3-year internship within our wineries. We take 3 interns in each year, and it's about giving back. It's we have such an amazing amount of knowledge within our group. And how do we give that back to the next generation? So that is a strong element for us as well, as our learning from each other and then giving back to the younger generation of winemakers that are coming through. And it's very much based about transformation within our industry, and it's built around that. And I'm actually also chairman of the Cape Winemakers Guild Development Trust as well. So it's a thing that lies very close to my heart, development of young individuals and young people. So we put a lot of effort into that, and a lot of work into that. So are we going to taste this wine now, or are we going to taste it?
Talking about giving back, please give back.
Let's give back to your glasses. So the second wine we will be having this evening is the Proprietor's blend, and very much if you can obviously take it back to, I always like to say, the property blend, and it's a blend of 6 different varieties. And it's very much the 6 different varieties that we have on the property, and very much planted. And blended as we've planted on these great slopes of the Helderberg Mountains. 60% Cabernet Sauvignon that gives you the structure, the mouthfeel, and the length. And then 20% Shiraz. Shiraz is a variety with quite a thin skin, and it gives you a lot of voluptuous, a lot of like spicy flavors. And then that's what this 20% gives to the blend. And then we have smaller percentages of Cabernet Franc, which is quite austere, so it brings a bit of coolness, minerality to the blend. Then Petit Verdot Malbec are quite perfumey, quite floral flavors, and I call them a little bit of the marketing department of the blend. They're like in your face, which like marketing people do. They tell you their story. And then Merlot is there just to knit the different components together. And I think that is what, when you guys work with portfolios, you look at different elements. What is the strength? What is, but something, you look at something else, and this is the strength, and then you put that portfolio together. And that is what we do with most wine as well. It's about different varieties have different strengths. And the great wines of the world, and some people will say, which is not true, are blends. And it's about bringing in different elements together and bringing that in harmony and understanding those elements and bringing that together in a glass. So this is the 2018 vintage. It's a wine that has actually done really well for us. It got top 10 in the Prescient report. So they taste all we call this a non-Bordeaux blend. So a Bordeaux blend wouldn't have any Shiraz in. So any specific varieties have to be blended in a wine to be a Bordeaux blend. But this is a non-Bordeaux blend with Cabernet Shiraz as a base, and it also got this great, obviously also a gold medal in Decanter in London. So it's a wine that I've actually done really well with the style of blending, but it's very much a new world style of blending. Traditionally the Europe won't blend Cabernet and Shiraz together, but the new world such as Australia, South Africa, Argentina, Napa Valley they blend Cabernet and Shiraz together. So on the nose, you'll see a little bit more development. It is now 6 years old, so you get a little bit more softer mouthfeel than the Cabernet Sauvignon. But as the wine, obviously, as the 6 years down the line, the Cabernet starts showing us a little bit more minerality, not as red fruit as we had on the Cabernet Sauvignon. And a beautiful mouthfeel. But I think this wine is now 6 years old, and this wine can easily. People love to ask me like, how long can a wine keep? I say, how long is a piece of string? And how well do you look after it? But this one can easily take 15 years and it will still be showing really well. And people, like I said, people love to ask me, but if you don't look after the wine, just remember wine is a living product. It's not because you put a cork in it, it's captured and it's not going anywhere. It's evolving and changing all the time. So if you store this wine at 25 degrees Celsius in direct sunlight, the wine is probably going to last only 10 years because sun and heat just diminishes the quality. But if you keep it at grade 13 to 15 degrees Celsius in a shady place, not direct sunlight, this can probably last 20 years. So it depends on how you look after the wine as well.
Yeah, like they say, it's a living product. And what I like about a blend is it's your choice as winemaker.
Yeah.
What you're going to do with it. And it's very similar when you talk about asset management and you look about a multi-asset fund. They also mix the different asset allocations together. But it's interesting in 91 that you've got different points of view. It's not as a company, you've got, this is our house view, and this is how we're going to stay. There's different asset managers, and they've got different point of view.
Yeah, I think that makes us quite unique as an asset management house, that each of the channels, if it's fixed income, if it's growth, if it's value, if it's quality, for example, have different views. I think what's nice, it can sometimes confuse obviously for us to get to the end client, we work via independent advisors and wealth managers. So they need to understand sort of the different views. It's difficult to say 91, what is your view? Because we actually have different views in-house. But I think for personally, what is nice about that, you can actually compile an entire portfolio for a client out of 91 solutions only. Yeah. Because it's not one house view that says, let's go left, center, or right. Because there's different views that actually can strengthen a portfolio. So it's quite unique. The advisor needs to obviously understand that because there's different views. But what's nice is there's always something to choose, if not a combined portfolio. Because when you choose, similar to what Louis said, my view, you need to, and I'm not an expert in that, when you build a portfolio, you cannot build a portfolio out of the same style. It has to be styles that are uncorrelated with each other, that at some stage of the game in a market cycle, the one actually is in favor. Yeah.
Albert, I've got a two-part question for you. With tax season now, we have a lot of clients in money market funds. And now they're getting a huge shock.
You're staying with your money market.
They are staying.
I see the opportunity.
But the long story short is you see a lot of them now coming back and saying, listen, I'm paying a hell of a lot of tax on my interest.
We've been warning you.
We've all been warning them. But long story short is you get people that are adamant on money market
Which
funds.
Is fine.
And we spoke about the volatility and the stability within a money market fund. Maybe we can just touch on if you would like to stay invested and to be still, remain invested in a money market fund, is there a different way of being a bit more tax efficient? And for people that don't like the volatility of equity markets or balanced funds, if there's another fund that's got a little bit more yield, a little bit more growth in a money market fund, is there anything that you would basically recommend on that?
Can't recommend, but I can put forward.
Put forward what is 91.
Louis, mark your note. I just do it. I think very important. So we're all different. I am driven by structure. It's because of my nature. One of my colleagues, we present a talk to advisors, very popular talk for quite a long time, since March 2020. So we combine quite well because I am driven by structure. What I mean by that, I need to know when I invest as a client, I want no surprises. So I will invest in and you need to show me the flow of money during my lifetime, but especially on my death. Whoever gets it from me, is it my wife, is it my trust, is it my sister, is it my mother? There should be no surprises. I don't like to wait, meaning like immediately the structure that I would choose would cut out my will, the master, the executor, where my colleague, for example, is driven by performance. So he wants to say, I want to pay as less tax as possible. So the point I want to make is there's different type of client. The one client says, I want to pay less tax. The other client says, okay, fine, just give me something that whatever happened, that money just flows over to my beneficiary on my passing. Point I want to make there is in South Africa, as well as overseas, if you sit on a lot of cash in a bank account, maybe because you want to buy something tomorrow, that's fine. But I would say if you sit on that cash for at least 6 months or longer, there's definitely ways to reduce your income tax, especially if you are individual and you are a trust with natural beneficiaries. You can reduce your tax dramatically. There's not as many ways if I'm a company and there's cash, for example, sitting in the company. There's not that many ways to deal with that, but there's definitely ways for individuals as well as for trust. I'll give you an example. I had a case the other day, let's say 15 million rand. It was a South African trust, and the trust was in Potchefstroom. Now, the client, they said, the money sits in a bank account. I never, ever want to invest it. I don't want to buy something, and I'm not going to take that money and distribute it through to the beneficiaries. So that money sits in the trust, and that interest in the bank account can tax at 36% in the trust. Now, he says to us sort of like, how can I make that money work harder? Now, interesting what we said, you know what? If you say, take the money and put it in a structure, immediately the tax there will be done at 30% versus the trust income tax at 45%. In the structure, the capital gain is 12% versus in the trust is 36%. So immediate trust, that's the box tick. But now, if you take the money, you can say, what is the next step in our view from an interest rate cycle? The moment inflation is under control, interest rate is going to come down. That's not good for bank account or good for money market. If you go to a slight step above money market, maybe a high income fund, when interest rates come down, you're going to get an additional capital gain. So yes, you can work the money market, slightly higher risk, slightly the capital harder. But then also one of them, you say, maybe that trust must just put 20% in an overseas cash and bond fund. With South African money, you can do that just to get maybe a 5-6% yield overseas. If the rand weaken, you get that, but you don't invest in foreign equities, for example.
Yeah.
Now, in 91, I don't want to mention names. I think you want me to. In 91, there's a fund called.
I'll say the diversified income.
Yeah, so I don't know if you have to be fund, but the South African 91 is a fund, high income, diversified income, but also there's a diversified income feeder that feeds in the big brother. Now, interesting, that fund is extremely tax effective because the fund it feeds into overseas is that rolled up accumulation, which I said earlier. And because it feeds in there, there's no income tax on that at all in South Africa. So to answer your question, Frans, or long-windedly, sorry, is I took money out of a bank account and I actually worked that money quite hard from a tax efficiency structure, liquidity, etc. But I didn't go into the market.
Yeah.
I stayed in the cash pool, but actually I diversified out of bank accounts. And I've actually, in my view, actually created a very nice, powerful investment structure for that client. Did I answer your question?
100%. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you, Albert. Another thing is very topical. Two-pot system. Now, a lot of clients have asked us about it. Everybody's talking about it, and it will actually affect everybody. So just quickly, there's in all of your retirement money, there's going to be two pots. Essentially, there's a savings pot and a retirement pot. Because we've seen, and we understand why government's doing this, because we've seen, especially when COVID, people are all leaving their jobs to get access to that money.
Dangerous.
And they're saving for retirement, but they need money now. So you can understand the reasoning behind it. So from 91 side of you, what are you expecting? Because you will see a great outflux, I would say, at the retirement side of it. But in the long term, it should be good for retirement savings. Because remember, after this, then you won't be able, when you leave your employer, take the whole money if you're in a provident fund. So it will, in the long term, it will take a long time for it to show the benefits thereof. But I guess immediately we will see a great outflux out of the market.
I'm proud of it. I think 91 is proud of it as well. I think very important what we see today is literally what you say, and it's actually quite worrying. I would resign from my job today just to get my hands on my pension and my provident fund. Very important. What we've also seen, I would get divorced today just for my spouse to get 50% whatever of my retirement funds. And I think to put two-pot is trying to avoid that. So for the audience members, I've also seen, and don't sort of, regardless on what education level you are, people say, let's cash in today my retirement funds before the 1st of September, because coming the 1st of September, my stuff is going to be completely illiquid and difficult to access. Whatever you have today is completely unaffected. So you do not have to rush to do anything before the 1st of September. Also very important, if you were older than 55 years old, the 1st of March 2021, and two-pot kick in now the 1st of September this year, you are completely unaffected. Unless you decide you want to sort of join the two-pot system. I think what two-pot is actually quite nice from an advisor point of view. If I and my wife, maybe we are 33 years old, we've been working maybe for 6 years, and I resign today, most likely I'll take my money because I think I'm still young enough to build up retirement funds, take the money, pay off debt, and maybe go buy something. Now, come 1 September, and I'm that person, I've been working maybe from 1 September, 6 years later, sort of 2/3 of that money, which I contributed, you cannot touch it. Now, suddenly the advisor space is going to get involved with younger clients into a retirement pot because they can't touch it. Also very important, that people think, come 1st of September, where's my 30,000? It's not necessarily 30,000. 1st of September, they look at your sort of what you have. Now, actually, eventually, you're going to sit with 4 pots. You're going to sit with the saving pot, retirement pot, vested pot, and non-vested. If I've been working for a long time, and I was younger than 55 the 1st of March. There they'll take 10% capped at 30,000 Rand and put it in my savings pot. Now, if I have 91, have a provident fund, I have a preservation fund because maybe I left employment some time ago, I have a retirement annuity of 91, and maybe I got a retirement annuity at another provider. It's 30,000 per product, assuming my product have enough. 10% capped at 30,000. Now, when you take the money annually, great for you, as per tax year, 1 March to end of February, watch out, that money you take is net of your marginal tax rate. So yes, it creates annual liquidity, great, but watch out, is very tax punitive. But at least there's liquidity, should you need it, that you don't touch it.
And just before the time I said to Albert, don't get too technical. And
sorry, there I go.
No, but
sorry.
That's where an advisor.
I blame the wine, Louis.
That's definitely where the advisor can assist, because it is.
We can help.
It is complicated.
Like
it's going to be
lots of moving parts.
It's very difficult.
Sorry, Theo.
100%. Yvonne is joining us from Chamonix, but she's drinking champagne, not Ernie Els. So that's a detriment. So Yvonne, now there's a question for you from Timmy. My husband is keeping wine from 1976.
Sure.
And doesn't want to touch it after so long. Is it good? What should he open?
Probably a good thing. Not
can you still drink it?
You can still drink it. Actually, I had a 77 yesterday evening.
Sure.
But it's stylistically, the wine is not something that you're used to, and something that you're not used to, you'll be it'll be quite different, and you won't understand the flavor profile. So it'll have a lot of earthy flavors, quite minerally and quite damp. Actually, some can become the flavor. So it's flavors that you're not so used to. So we open wine like that just for interest, and probably not to just keep it on the shelf but open it and see what it tastes like. But it would be drinkable. But sometimes these wines would have, it depends on the cork, because we're working with a cork that is not, it can be impure, meaning it can allow a little bit more oxygen in than other cork, because it's not a constant. And then that wine can overdevelop, and then it will start getting too much oxygen, and then it will go into volatility. So, long story short, it is a risk. As you guys would say, it's a risk to say if the quality is still there. But no, it's interesting. But not everyone. There'll get very few people that understand older wine.
It is quite an acquired taste. It will be probably very brown when you open it.
Exactly. Like I'm talking about that oxidation that would have evolved. Remember what I said? It's a living product. Wine evolves and it moves and it changes. It's not like a cognac or a brandy that gets it gets fixed in time because of the alcohol that's preserving it. The wine evolves over time and develops. So to taste older wines is quite an acquired taste.
Yeah. What would you serve food-wise with this wine?
So this wine loves red meat. So a sirloin steak or a fillet steak or a ribeye. This is what this wine loves. And there's a bit of science behind it. You know, protein is positively charged. That's what you from a meat is a protein, and the wine is actually the tannins are actually negatively charged with in your palate. So when you actually the wine will change completely when you bring it into your mouth. You're actually having a little bit technical. We say we're not going to get technical, but it's the proteins and the tannins that are actually in your mouth, just making the wine coating your mouth and actually just polymerizing in your mouth. It just completely changes the wine and the meat that you and the protein doesn't have to be meat. And that's why if you look at pastas, which is a carbohydrate, you need to put a real hearty meaty sauce if you want to make a richer red wine having with that. So you must understand the wine. Because you can have red wines that are really light in style, like a Grenache or a Cinsault, that could work with a carbohydrate because the tannins are so low. It's more like a white wine than a red wine. And that is the great thing about I'm doing actually a wine and dine this week at Cavalli. And that's the great thing. We can sit with the chef before the time, and then we put the wines on the table, and we put the dishes on the table, and we taste and we see, and how has this wine been affected by the flavor and the different food, the different meats, if it's salty or not salty. And that's the great thing about wine, to understand the wine and then matching that with the food pairing.
That's negative.
Oh, but I need to leave. We also almost need to leave, but I need to left the difficult question for last. The US elections. I mean, so much has happened in the last month, and we can't see Trump not winning. What does it mean? It probably will mean the rand weakening against the dollar, because he's very much America for America. It put him a lot of money in the American economy, making it grow, rand weakening a little bit, and probably keeping interest rates higher for longer. Do you share the sentiment? What do you think will it pan out?
I can't comment on Trump winning or not. There's obviously quite sort of like everybody have their view, but obviously logically what you're saying is that will make sense. On the flip side, we're quite pro sort of, if you look at South Africa, if you look at the rand, if the sentiment can remain, very important. Then the second question, so the positive sentiment towards South Africa can remain. Then very important, the big question is, what will the dollar do? Now, will the dollar sort of like the dollar's result will determine what interest rates overseas do, and obviously indirectly that's also related to elections. But keeping in mind also on the flip side, also, if the sentiment remains positive in South Africa, the foreign inflow from to into South Africa has been non-existent for some time. So if people say suddenly there's good sentiment, people say there's value in South African market, when the foreign flow comes into South Africa, that can also affect the rand, for it to strengthen the rand. But Gio, to speculate, sort of like logic say, obviously what you just said now, I think from an investment point of view, which I can just say, and again, my mind potentially is not the same as yours, so how would that work? When I take the money out of the country, is a very specific reason why I do that. Now, that normally, if I apply for my 10 million tax allowance today, that tax allowance is a 12-month valid, but it's only, I have to take it per calendar year. So sometimes I find sort of November, December flows spike because I hanged on for that rand for so long, but I have to take it now because otherwise sort of I lose that allowance. So when I take money physically out of the country, my view to the audience, and you may agree or not agree with me, don't be so fixated only on the rand. Because when I take it out of the country, I have to make a specific decision. I want to diversify away from the rand, away from South African market, away from the political environment in South Africa. Maybe I immigrate, maybe I retire one day overseas, maybe I want to save overseas for my children's education. There's a lot of other reasons. Don't let the rand only dictate
Yeah.
if I take the money out
I
or
mean, we're
not.
not currency brokers, if I can call it that. Taking it out today at low rand in months' time, you want to bring it back.
But what you find with the incline, which I sort of deal with our advisors, as I said earlier, the word, and I want to use the word again, they're really fixated by the rand, and they forget everything around actually what offshore investment
various
is
factors
about.
we have to keep in mind. Louis, back to you guys. Thank you so much. We are almost
Pleasure.
at the end of the day. This was really beautiful. You said this discount for the Bovis clients for everybody watching today up until the end of September, 15%.
Correct. So the wines that we have at the winery, most like say Cabernet based wines, Cabernet based blends. We have a Chenin Blanc and a Rosé as well. So please make use of the discount and enjoy our wines with friends and family around the table.
100%. Albert, thank you to you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Dankie Louis, ek het ook geleer.
Yeah, we definitely. I'm not sure if your wine is finished there at home, but we're going to enjoy the rest of this. But thank you very much for joining us. We will be sending an email with the link. I think we've recorded it. And also there's some interesting slides which Albert have spoken about. Also the voucher for the discount at Ernie Els. But thank you very much from our side at Bovis. Really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you in person relatively soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.